Good afternoon. Thanks very much to the organization for inviting us here to share this roundtable with all of you. My name is Maite. I'm the moderator of this. I work in Catalonia, and it's a pleasure for me to be here with these different initiative and SMEs here today. Since we're a little bit behind our schedule today, I'm going to ask my colleagues here at the table to please limit your presentations to 10 minutes. I'm going to give the floor now to Edith Godella. She's from the biotechnology group, and she's a member of the coordinating team of the European group FISAC. Good morning to all of you. Thank you to the European Commission and the organization for inviting us. What I came to present is an initiative within the 2020 Horizon program, and this is a success case of financing in circular economy led by a private company. We're Acciona Infrastructure. We're a Spanish company, private initiative. The project, which is called Fostering Industrial Symbiosis for Sustainable Resource-Intensive Industry Across the Extended Construction Value Chain. That's the name of the project. This was presented under the topic of waste in Horizon 2020. Right now we're working on the project. It's a 24-month project. Now, to set the context, and all of the presentations this morning have put us in the context of circular economy, but just to remark here, that European industries depend heavily on raw materials, and industries that we call, they consume a lot of resources, and many of the industries, the SPY platform, are also in this project. So these industries depend on resources, and so we're promoting the use of secondary raw materials, in other words, waste. Now, just to repeat what was already stated this morning, the lack of solutions and the efficient recycling of waste, one of the solutions is this industrial symbiosis. Now, this allows waste to be considered secondary raw material. Now, for this to work, this symbiosis is absolutely essential. Companies need to know one another's processes, and they need to know what the waste produced is and how it can be used as a secondary raw material in another sector. And if without this partnership, it's very difficult to work with this symbiosis. The main objective is to develop a new industrial symbiosis model with zero waste in industries that intensively use natural resources. Now, FISAC is providing innovative solutions for the reuse of industrial waste through industrial symbiosis technologies. Now, thanks to this model, new material flows will be established, and the reuse of secondary prime materials and innovative products will be produced in construction and in other industries. The concept that FISAC has is to develop an industrial symbiosis methodology in the value chain of construction through a software platform. Now, this software platform seeks to validate the symbiosis, with through geo-referencing, in other words, putting the waste generators with possible industries that could use this waste. Also incorporating the life cycle of these materials. The FISAC methodology, the symbiosis methodology, is based on the 3 pillars of sustainability and develops economic, social, and environmental models. Different interest groups, SMEs, that participate in the construction sector. The public authorities are vital for the development and fostering the use of these strategies, and also developing legislation to favor the achievement of these circular economy strategies and help to remove the technical and legislative barriers that we often find in using these secondary raw materials, recyclers, manufacturers, research centers, and so forth, and facilitators. The consortium, it's a very big project with a budget of 11 million euros, 9 million from the European Union, or 16 partners, 26 partners, as you can see there. The project is a real challenge because with this many partners for a project like this, it's a huge challenge for us as the coordinators, but it allows us to be very ambitious with our objectives and know that we have a working team that will, with which we will achieve the project's objectives. This slide's a little bit confusing, but it does sum up what FISAC does from where we started with the different sectors. We have the steel, secondary aluminum, ceramics, natural stone, construction, demolition, rubber. Then we have the byproducts or the waste from these different industries. This sludge from steel production. All of the different waste from ceramics and stone and so forth. And then at the end, these materials, secondary raw materials, are used for the manufacturing of the new materials. Eco cement, for example, new green concrete, innovative ceramics, and so forth. This is done in 2 stages in the industries that generate waste. Different techniques are used so that they can be that their waste can be secondary raw materials and used through this industrial symbiosis. All of this methodology is integrated within a software platform. I'm sorry, I apologize for going so fast because I do have very little time. Just in conclusion, the initiatives that we're implementing here are to support this circular economy that don't exist at the present time. We need to foster these, and we need to co-create this through the different industries, in partnership with the different industries and all of the different stakeholders that are involved in the process. And for us, for FISAC, the circular economy schemes and the cooperation and implementation of new technologies and responsible consumption as well. A very important part is the integration of the society in all of the different models that we develop, and the model of what the consumer can demand from different construction materials, for example, the creation of these new business models, recycling as a fundamental part to produce these secondary natural resources. And it's really a new circular economy model for construction. Thanks very much. For more information, you can contact with any of us, or you can go into our project webpage. Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Edith. Now we're going to hear from Oscar Garcia. He's the Director General of Bio Oils in Huelva. He's going to talk about sustainable fuels. First of all, thanks very much for the invitation and to be able to participate in this event. Everything is very interesting. I'm very happy to be here. I'm going to be brief, and I'm going to try to stay within my 10 minutes. I came to present an initiative within circular economy, specifically in biofuels and the use of biodiesel. Biodiesel is fuel made from animal or plant fats, and it's a product that can be used in any diesel motor. In the European market today, there's an obligation to incorporate biofuels in transport, so when you put diesel fuel into your tank, part of that, between 5 and 7%, is usually biofuel, bio-oil, mixed with the diesel fuel. Now, our project was born within the Bio-Oils company. It's a company that was founded in 2009, and it has a production plant in the city of Huelva with a capacity of 250 million liters. And it has a second stage programmed. It's being enlarged right now for another 200 million liters. It's a plant, like I said, in the city of Huelva. As you can see here, it's right next to an industrial, right next to a Calypso refinery in Huelva, and it receives all of its raw material by road, but also through the port. So the processing of the products is processed in the plant, and then it's transferred directly. Most of the production would go to the refinery. So it's a very efficient project in terms of logistic costs and transport to deliver the product directly to the refinery, where it's mixed with the diesel fuel, and then it's sent to the distribution centers, to the petrol stations. We've been working now for 8 or 9 years on the project, and up until now, we've produced practically 1.5 million liters of biodiesel. That's been incorporated into our national fuel system. Now, what types of R&D, or what background do we have in bio-oils? Basically, our R&D department was operating from the very beginning, even before the plant came into operation, and has always had 4 or 5 main areas of focus. First, to optimize processes, to improve processes, trying to reduce the energy consumption, minimize losses, and so forth. And with a lot of modifications in the processes, we've fine-tuned that to improve that area. The second important area is products, to optimize the quality of the product, adapt to all of the quality standards, fuel quality standards, which are more and more demanding, especially in terms of mineral fuels, but also biofuels. So we're optimizing that quality. And then all of the byproducts and waste, try to minimize those byproducts and waste and to take advantage of them. And third, those that can't be reused, at least try to look for other industries that could utilize these byproducts in their production cycles. The other main area was seeking new raw materials to produce biodiesel. Raw materials, for example, that could be waste from other industries, for example, or new raw materials, fats from seaweed and so forth, from areas that are not included or that don't compete with the other uses that fats can have in the market, either for food use or other. We also see at the origin, we've been involved in this circular economics from the very beginning, and the use of new products or waste, and how we can make the best use of our own waste, the waste that we produce. We try to produce as little as possible and try to find other uses in other industries for those. Our R&D department here, as you can see, has a full laboratory so we can carry out all types of analyses of fats and final products. We have pilot plants for refinery, oil refinery, the mixing of the biodiesel. We have a pilot plant for each one of our processes. We have a chemistry department and a person in charge of the technology. Either one of these two experts work in R&D and communicate with the different departments of the company. They all actively participate in the entire project. So the entire company are involved in R&D in one way or another. And specifically, the project most related to circular economy is the BioSost program. Our ongoing research program came up with this BioSost project, and under the new directive or the amendment of the Renewable Energies Directive, it focuses on incentivizing as much as possible those biofuels coming from waste or other types of new raw materials that are not competing with the agricultural sector and so forth. So special emphasis on that area. We're limiting the use of virgin vegetable oils or the use in biofuels, and we're incentivizing all these other types of additional raw materials or secondary raw materials. We have compulsory objectives for their use, and also they're giving greater value, and the obligations of the mixture, greater value is given to these other types of fuels than agricultural oils, plant oils. The CO2 levels, the levels are becoming more and more demanding as well, so we have to save as much CO2 as possible. So this is what we're looking for in our R&D. We're looking for those raw materials that together with this change of the regulation that incentivizes the use of secondary oils, waste oils, and that's the objective of the BioSost program. Our main objective is to reduce the use of current raw material, which is vegetable oil, virgin vegetable oil, and replacing them with these other types of raw materials. The idea then is to search for other residual raw materials from industrial sectors and agricultural sectors that could be incorporated into the process. Look at the best way to process these. The current technology could be good for processing some of them, but many have certain characteristics would need different types of specific processing or different industrial process to be able to convert them into biofuels. And also, the final product has to have meet the quality standards for use in transport. A lot of these raw materials, even though these can be converted, the big problem that they have is that the final product doesn't meet the specifications needed for transport. So we have to see the best way and most efficient way to process that final product so that it can be used and meet all of the technical specifications to be used for transport. The project then started at the end of 2012 and 2013. We had the approval of Fedetti, and we had the loans from at low interest rate to launch the project. And it's a one-company project. It's our company. We're not a consortium, as we saw in the case right before me. And the project is until the second half of 2015. That's when we got the next project. And basically, the main results of the project were, first, we had to, in addition to seeking new raw materials, we had new analysis methods because there were components in those new raw materials that were different, that we're usually processing and could have an important influence on the process. So there's new analytical processes, laboratory processes to be able to analyze and understand them better. And there was 5 waste products that we found that could be processed to produce biofuel. 3 are from close by industries that we could procure very easily. And they were not being used. And then we had 2 waste products where there was no type of use for them and no type of processing for them, and they were being burned just to get rid of them. So that first stage was using those 5 waste materials that we developed processes for, and we also designed a new production process to be able to process them. A lot of these have certain characteristics that need new processes. So we developed those, one. And this new production process has been patented at European level. So it's a different new process that we developed internally in the company as part of the project. And finally, for the purification and final processing, modifications in the process were implemented so that the final product, this biofuel, complies or meets the technical standards to be able to be used for current diesel motors. The second result is that part of the project, some of these raw materials are being used. We have a completely new process here that will be able to process between 40 and 45 million liters per year of those waste products that we discovered that we couldn't now process. That plant is being built and it will be finished by April or May of next year. And we'll be able to begin production with these new raw materials. And in our case, some of those new materials, some of that waste products that can be processed, we're launching new R&D projects that require additional study to see how they can be optimized to achieve those waste products and then be able to process them at the plant. So for 2 of those products, there are parallel products to see how they can be optimized so that they can be collected and then efficiently processed in the old plant and this new plant that's being built right now. And thanks very much. We're at your disposal for any questions that you have. I think I stayed within my 10 minutes. Thanks very much.
Virginia Trujillo. She's the promoter of upcycling the oceans. Will be speaking. From EcoAlf.
Bueno, hola a todos.
Hello everyone, I'm Virginia Trujillo. I work for the EcoAlf Foundation Business Development, and I promote its project Upcycling the Oceans. And before I give you more details about the project, I'll tell you how everything started. It was born thanks to Javier Begomochen in 2009 from a textile sector company, and the idea was to create a fashion brand name which was sustainable. Recycling was the solution. EcoAlf's vision is to stop using natural resources and start to recycle the different types of waste we can find in the planet. We want to provide the first generation of recycled garments offering the same quality as traditional garments, as you can see in the picture. What do we recycle? We recycle fishing nets, bottles, PET quality, polyester, coffee waste, cotton, and post-industrial wool, among others. Fishing nets are made of nylon 6, most of them, one of the most resilient materials in the world, so it's a very good material for our garments, same as the jacket I myself am wearing. PET plastic bottles is another example. PET can be recycled, and we can get recycled polyester, very good for our tissues as well. Regarding reused tires, we collaborated with La Rioja institutions. From 7 types, we could only use one of these types of material to create flip-flops without using any sticking material or anything of the sort. Coffee waste provide very good qualities for tissues against, for example, sun irradiation, against certain smells. And then post-industrial cotton is based on a mechanical process, so it's much more beneficial than normal cotton. And then post-industrial wool. For example, benefits of using recycled bottles: 20% less water used, 40% less energy, and 50% less carbon emissions, greenhouse effect emissions. This is a garment made out of 80 recycled bottles. And fishing nets. Most of them are discarded by fishers. They don't want to have them in the port. They don't want to store them, so they just discard them in the sea, and that can be very detrimental to ecosystems. So this nylon material is very good for our tissues, and we get 27% less consumption of natural resources, 28% less emission of greenhouse gases, and we also reduce pollution. Coffee. Technical properties of coffee for our polyester tissue is easier drying, smell control, protection against the sun, and it's eco-friendly. We are cooperating with a Taiwanese company. We collect all this material for our purposes. Our flip-flop project from tires and benefits are 0% consumption of natural resources, 50% less energy consumption, and 60% less air pollution. And this is the final product. Then with cotton, we have a mechanical process. We consume less water, less energy, and fewer greenhouse effect gases. Before talking to you about a project we started up a year and a half ago, 2 years ago in Los Angeles and in Hawaii, as you can see here, I'll mention something. Upcycling the Oceans is the name of the project. EcoAlf started this project. EcoAlf Foundation was created thanks to an American philanthropist and wanted to create this project with the company Javier Ecoeche. It started in the eastern coast of Spain. We intend to apply this to other regions of the world, and we are working on that. The point was to recover as much waste from the seabed as possible, because it is destroying our ecosystems. And how did we do this? We started on the eastern coast, cooperating with all fishers associations. 165 ships of the sector are participating in our project, and when they return to port, they provide us with all the waste they found. We're talking about 10 ports, more or less, participating with us. And this waste is stored in certain containers. Petria gets this waste and sends them to the recycling plant. We cannot recycle absolutely everything coming out of the sea, so we can only recycle plastic waste. The rest of the waste types are sent to their recycling plants, where they get back to their chain. We are getting around 4 and 5 kilos trash every day, talking about fishermen. Then we get pellets out of it, and we get a thread out of it as well. And we're talking about the first thread generation made out of the plastic waste out of the sea. Textil Santanderina cooperates with us in order to make a tissue out of this thread from the seabed of the Mediterranean Sea. And it's a project which was totally carried out in Spain, and it's going to be replicated elsewhere. Here you see all stages. First collection, then storage, then separation, recycling, transformation. We get our thread, we get our tissue, we design, and we get our final product. And these are some pictures of us describing the whole process. And this is a clip. I'm not sure whether I can show it because we are running out of time. May I? It doesn't work. Anyway, I'll keep on telling you about our activities. In the future, we've got certain aims. We have 9 ports, 165 ships. We are working with the waste administration in Catalonia in order to get to 14 more ports in Girona, Barcelona, and Tarragona. More than 300 additional ships will be participating, and we want to collaborate with all fishermen's groups in Murcia, Andalusia. The aim is to cover the whole eastern coast of Spain. We signed a contract with the Taiwanese government starting in 2017 in order to replicate the project in the Taiwanese islands, in Phuket, to be more specific. And we intend to go to other countries in the Mediterranean, such as Italy, France, and Northern Africa. Sequel is the name of this initiative. In February, we will be presenting this in a fair in 2007, and it's an EcoAlves project. It's important to keep in mind. It was an entity starting to work with waste, and EcoAlf was necessary in order to get everything working.
Este es otro vídeo. Bueno, igual este funciona.
Pero es que es raro, porque de verdad que pesa muchísimo, tu presentación pesa como...
Sí, pues por eso.
Claro, entonces, o sea, sigue pesando.
Ah, claro.
Estás... no, pero yo sé.
Es verdad.
No, a ver, pon la presentación. Mira a ver si está en PDF. ¿Tú la mandaste en PDF?
Yo lo mandé, sí, en PDF.
Entonces, no, entonces está en PDF. Pero en internet está, si queréis, pues en la primera parte. Pues mira a ver en internet.
Si hay tiempo, si no hay tiempo, prefiero no... De verdad.
Una extraña y dañina especie ha colonizado nuestra...
There's a very harmful species in our oceans, namely sea waste. More than 6 million tons of waste are discarded in the ocean every year. They are more harmful than greenhouse effect even. The situation will worsen if we don't change the way we relate to oceans. We need to find new solutions in order to preserve the life of our planet. From EcoAlf, we try to do things differently. That's how our project Upcycling the Oceans started. A project which should be replicated elsewhere in the world. This project tries to use waste in the Mediterranean Sea in order to produce thread. We've been working with different partners, among them, most importantly, fishermen on the eastern coast in Spain. And we reuse the plastics they collect. This plastic would be present in the seabed for more than 400 years if we didn't collect it. So we contribute to preserve the sea. There's a huge risk if we don't do anything. That's why EcoAlf comes in to participate. We also carry out awareness campaign in order to improve the situation.
Muchas gracias, Virginia. Continúa.
Thank you very much, Virginia. José Millará from Ecoche. He'll be talking about the reuse of combustion engine cars as electric cars now. This transformation.
Si le das a pantalla, ahí lo tienes. Y este lo minimizas y lo haces todo lo que quieras. Luego cuando encuentras la pantalla completa, pues si esto se pudiéramos saltar. Vale, ¿vale esto? Ya te pongo aquí.
Sí, lo voy a lanzar ahora mismo. Aquí voy a empezar con esto.
Ah, vale.
Hola, buenas.
Hello, I'll start with a clip as an introduction, and then I'll explain myself what we do. It's not our own clip, it was developed by another company.
Bueno, empezamos por ahí. Vengo de la empresa Ecoche.
I come from
Nuestra idea
Ecoche.
un poco... El vídeo es de Suecia, como habéis podido ver.
The clip comes from Sweden. Do you remember this woman? That's Murlen, responsible for the Brundtland report, talking about sustainability and how green things are. She just intended to create a new economy for the new generations, taking care of the environment based on a good economy and a good society. I don't know whether she made it 3 years later, as we are living now. Joaquin Mendoza Sanchez, he's a shoemaker. He always said that every nail can be reused if we can put it somewhere else again. And if not, at least we can store it for a later use, or we can sell it later. Antonia Milara Sanchez is a cook. Can you hear me appropriately? One day she used some textile waste and she made a trouser out of it, and this is the trouser I'm wearing, and it didn't have to be subjected to any approval by a certain institution. That's good news. I don't think Antonia heard about Brundtland's report or anything about Sweden and their ministries. 11 hectares burning in our country of polluting materials. 11 hectares, and in a developed country it seems impossible to bring a solution to this. On the other hand, we've got the Nordic countries, such as Sweden. They develop a certain tire that is never pricked. Also for heavy vehicles, this is quite useful. We're going to talk a little bit about cars. What is Ecoche doing? Ecoche analyzes the current situation and realizes that for producing cars we need natural resources and industry producing components which are taken to a plant. For example, Móstoles, 2,000 jobs, but those jobs are not forever. And then we use the marvelous internal combustion engine cars with fossil fuels, with carbon emissions, and then the company decides to make it more sustainable. Okay, now we go for the electric car, but again, we need a lot of natural resources that need to be transformed in an industry. Okay, now we go to another town, Leganés, 2,000 additional jobs, but those jobs are not forever either. And then we have a vehicle working with electric energy, low carbon emissions, okay. But the electrical energy used in Madrid are produced by surrounding regions with some wind energy, some photovoltaic energy, but we need to reapproach the situation. Let's see this. Power Electronics Department, the University of California, establishes a comparison between producing a combustion car and an electric car without analyzing use of car. Of course, the electric car has no carbon emissions, 20% in relation to combustion engines. That's only the reduction we get of emissions. Then they think, okay, we need to innovate. We need to avoid producing these exhaust fumes. So we can remove all the combustion components, a tank, filters, engine. We can recycle all these components. We'll need natural resources to some extent in order to produce the electric engines, some controllers, some minute components in order to create a green, a sustainable vehicle. And then we might think, okay, that's all, already done. But then we thought the following thing. In order to transform traditional cars into electric cars, we need workshops that are trained in this sector. Okay, we go to the university, talk to Enrique, an excellent person, and create a training program for workshops. And now we've got 2 workshops in Extremadura. Casar de Cáceres and Estrella are the 2 towns, and then we get calls from Granada, Alicante, Almeria, Madrid, and from Pontevedra. We're talking about small villages. So sustainability is mainly focused on villages rather than on big cities. So before the end of the year, we want to make our activities online, to offer internships and practice so that people get to know how the vehicle is dismembered in order to get the materials and reassemble. We go beyond production. We also promote the use of renewable energy in the vehicle. How do we get to do that? It's very simple. Not everything about the government is negative. With the mobility plan, the government gives money in order to get points for recharge. From Brussels, we get 15,000 euros, 60% more or less of the funding, in order to get solar panels at home. And this way, we are promoting a scheme whereby the house owner can be self-sufficient and recharge his vehicles for more or less 20,000 kilometers. I was working on that the other day, actually, for a specific house. Circular economy is a little bit surprising for me, the concept of circular. I think of economy as something which is more cyclical. There are new developments. We shouldn't limit ourselves to the circular. There are many colors in the palette. Benefits. We reduce carbon emissions. The life cycle of vehicles increases. There is less pollution, air pollution, and there's a social and economic benefit and an environmental benefit. How are we doing about time? Can you all understand me? And then maintenance costs are reduced by 50%. No need for changing oils, filters, valves, etc. People might think that electric cars are very expensive, but in the long run, there are much fewer costs for maintenance. And then fuel expenditure is reduced. €1.5 per 100 kilometers is our figure with electric cars. Did I go very quickly? Was everything clear? I just want to emphasize one more thing. We'd like the government to use the Commission support or any other institution support and realize that Mobile's scheme gives this 40% subsidy for a vehicle bought from a multinational corporation. But we don't get any of those subsidies because we are dealing with second-hand vehicles. So that's why I showed you the clip, because we need to go to Sweden to get these models when in fact we have these models to some extent in Spain, same as my grandparents did, recycling and reusing. I thank you for coming from Brussels, but I'm from Spain. We have things going on in Spain. Of course, there are things written on paper. My village in Extremadura is the most transparent, theoretically, but then we go to reality and we see that there's no transparency at all. I've got another clip so that you can see that we've changed our model. The engine is not at the front, but rather next to the wheel, so we have double boot.
Era solo eso. No, pero la idea era un poco eso, mostrar que todo el mundo.
Yeah, the point was to demonstrate how this worked. The point is to promote another mobility model. We have around 30 people from different car brand names that limit our possibilities, because when we tell you about our prices, people think, okay, I'll go for a new car, but we'll keep you updated on our progress. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. We're going to open a Q&A session now. We encourage those who are listening to us in streaming to send us your questions as well. Are there any questions here from the room first? If not, I think there is a question from the floor. As I said before, those who are listening in streaming, please send your questions in as well. My question is for Oscar about the development of biofuels. Are you experimenting? You're experimenting with waste materials, but the main waste material on the planet is CO2 produced by any kind of activity. Have you ever thought about using CO2 or sequestering CO2 for biofuels? That's a very interesting experimental work. You can reduce the CO2 that's emitted into the atmosphere, and you can reduce the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere. Yes, it's an idea that we are working on. We're doing it through seaweed right now, the sequestering of CO2 to create seaweed and then produce fats that can be used for biofuels, and then the rest of the material that can be used for other industries. This is an area that we've been working on. We participate in a couple European projects, and also with CEPSA in Huelva. So we are making advances there, but we're still far from making this a reality of really directly using the CO2. But we are moving forward in that area little by little. The results are good, but we're still far from doing this industrially like the other units where we can produce 40 or 50 million liters of biofuels per year. But we are doing research at European level and with CEPSA, with the multinational firm CEPSA. Thank you. Thanks. Another question for Oscar. I was reading this fight about in Europe about diesel and the scandal about Volkswagen and Renault and the emissions and the pollution that was created in the cities that's generated by diesel fuel. Europe invested in diesel at one point in its history, but now technologically we cannot really prevent pollution from the diesel fuel through the heavy particles. How does this affect your work? Is biofuel have the same characteristics as diesel fuel, or can it really be a replacement for diesel fuel? I'm very concerned that since you're using this waste, which is fantastic, but if you're losing the incentives because the policy on the use of fuel in 3 or 4 years might change, how will that affect your business in producing biodiesel? Yes, if we reduce the use of diesel, our market, our area of work will be reduced as well. In any case, the main problem of diesel engines is nitrous oxide, which produce the greatest amount of pollution, especially in cities, and particles and so forth, but it's mostly nitrous oxide. And it affects mostly cities, as I said, where these gas emissions are concentrated. But at the end of the day, diesel is still the main fuel for road transport. That doesn't affect cities. But there are going to be more restrictions on diesel cars in cities. That will happen. And there'll be greater demands on motors in terms of emissions, but the restrictions will be greater on diesel engines, so those emissions will go down. In the case of biodiesel, nitrous oxide has a similar impact. than than normal diesel fuel, but in terms of particles, that will be reduced to 80 or 85%. That's another element that they're not talking too much about, but it's also very important, and that's going to be the second wave of things that we'll be talking about. Sulfur also, it's about 80% lower sulfur emissions from biodiesel. So its incorporation does improve. And for the manufacturers, car manufacturers, they're starting to focus on mixtures of biofuels because that helps them to comply with some of their emission specifications. If 10% is bio, then they don't have to modify the motors to reduce their sulfur levels, for example. So, but in cities there will be more and more restrictions. That's clear. So we do believe that we'll still have opportunities. Can I ask another question? For Virginia, this upcycling of the oceans, is that economically sustainable? And I wanted to ask if EcoAlf has a business model to incentivize these fishermen to participate. How does that work? What is their incentive your incentive to maintain this program up and running? The EcoAlf Foundation does not pay the fishermen to collect these waste that they're doing this because this is their sustenance of life. These are families. Generation after generation, they've been working in trawl fishing, and it's disappearing now because of they're the ones who are destroying the sea with their nets. And so they're the number one, they're the most interested really in saving oceans. So they're the ones that see how all of this waste is affecting their fishing, the amount of fish they're able to catch each day. So we're not paying them anything. They are collaborating with us because they know that it's a project that's going to benefit them in the long run. Thanks very much. I think there was another question from the floor. This question is more for Jose and Virginia. Do you think that ecological labels, eco-labels, like the flower of the EU, are really adding value to their products? Or how do you think these products can be fostered so that customers, when they see a label on the brands that you represent, how do we really add value? Well, I don't know if we're meeting our objectives. In Brussels, then maybe it's working, but in Spain, I don't know. In our case, as we saw in our analysis, when you acquire a vehicle, you know where it comes from, and you know you don't know where the materials come from. Each piece of paper, each piece of clothing has a whole process until you buy it. And this economy, this cyclic economy, so it would be good to be conscious of it, really what you are buying. You know that the raw materials come from the sea, for example, and then you're wearing it. Our vehicle comes from any car that's on the road that we've transferred. You don't need to take it to a recycling center. So it is important to know that, to make that clear to customers, or to have some kind of label so that people are conscious of that. In other words, make it a little bit more personal so that we want people to buy objects because it has this commitment with the environment, not just because it's carrying the flower of eco-production. Another question from the floor? First, thanks for your presentations. I like them very much. My name is Maria Jose Fiel. I come from the ESF, and I'm working on issues related to communication. I thought it was very interesting what you said, but I work in different areas, and I wanted to know how do you disseminate what you're doing? How do you, so that everyone knows what you're doing and you can be benchmarks for other organizations, other companies that could take this as a model, or even for our decision makers? So if we know that you're doing this work, maybe we could help with our experience. So I would like to know, how do you establish specific measures to disseminate your work, communications, outreach work? Can you give us just a quick summary of how you do that outreach? How do you contact people and let them know what it is exactly that you're doing? In the case of projects that are finance projects, it's the Commission itself that establishes a whole work package for dissemination. And also, being a project financed by the European Commission, it opens the door for you have stakeholders meetings to present different initiatives and so forth. So it does facilitate this outreach work when you participate in a project. Maybe in other cases, in the cases about the cars, maybe it's more difficult because it's you who are doing this personally almost. But in R&D projects, dissemination also helps us to see the needs of different sectors, the needs of the administration, and this helps us to overcome certain legislative barriers as well. For example, in construction, to be able to install certain products, there's all kinds of standards that have to be met. And to change those standards takes a long time. So there, we do need the Commission and contact networks to help us to overcome those barriers. Recently, a program was launched by the Commission to detect these circular economics barriers. I don't remember the name of the program, but they were asking for initiatives to overcome barriers detected, and if the Commission then could intervene and help to overcome those barriers. In my presentation, it was just the university, the electronics department in Valencia. But Finnova has also supported this. We have recognition from them. Since we have them. The university has been backing us, but we're probably not disseminating it as broadly as possible. Maybe we're not known at government level, but at some schools we are included in the textbook. So maybe there should be other types of communication through the internet and workshops and so forth. And we had a training with the training program. There will be more dissemination. So any workshop that wants to reconvert into to one of our workshops in our garages, then it would be disseminated. Our situation is a little bit more complicated because we have communication from the whole fashion sector, magazines, everything that has to do with fashion. Our values and what we do is completely different from what is being done in the fashion industry in the world. Each one of these is looking a little bit more towards sustainability and so forth, but not like the things that we're doing. Our values are basically based on sustainability from the beginning until the end. Also, we have meetings like this one or the Ocean Conference in Washington, where our chairman was and founder gave a presentation there. The European Commission, Javier Aino, was also giving different talks about what we do. So the communication is divided into two parts, maybe the world of fashion and then the whole area of sustainability and concern there is over the issue of sustainability. In our case, we don't do too much outreach because we don't have the means by which to do it, and it doesn't have a great impact. And the more you talk to the administration, the more fearful they are of you. Maybe though we're afraid sometimes that they're going to close down our workshops. The more you explain it, or the less you explain to the government, sometimes the better. It's a shame to admit that, but that's the reality. Sometimes we don't want to call attention to ourselves. We're worried that maybe our factories would be closed down because the government would accuse us of not meeting certain standards. So sometimes we don't do too much outreach. Any other questions? More than a question, really. I just want to add something about the importance of communication. And in the case of Jose, he had won an award, and that was enough communication to get the Green Startup Award for an initiative from the European Commission for entrepreneurs. And thanks to that visibility, we started to work with public-private partnerships in the town hall of Seville that has adopted that idea of an entrepreneur. We had on Life led by IPASAM, which is a public company in Seville, and we have this technological company from Extremadura. That's the importance of communication, but focused on real projects. So thanks very much. If there are no other questions from the floor, I just wanted to finalize. I'd like to highlight that we've seen how circular economy is a driver and detector of technological innovation in terms of alternative materials, processes, business models, that it can be applied in all sectors, and we've had examples here in construction, biofuels, textile and fashion, and biomobility. Thanks very much. We're going to move on now to the next roundtable session. Thank you. Since we're a little bit behind schedule, I just wanted to summarize and say just a few things. I think that our moderator summarized that very well. Thanks very much for your participation. It's been, for me personally, it's been a very important, a very nice day, and I've learned a lot. We also, at the Commission, we, in our legislation, and sometimes we in our partnership with the ministries and regions, and it's so nice today to hear what startups and SMEs and entrepreneurs are doing on the ground. We're going to send you all the presentations, all the information that has been mentioned. You can contact us if you have any specific questions, or if you want to any other deeper, more explanation for anything, or if you want to contact anybody in Brussels, because we are different DGs, and so we can direct you to the person that you need to talk to. And to finish up, I was very, very impressed with all of you. I think that these are fantastic projects that you're working on, and in Extremadura, there are a lot of DF funds. And I hope that you're able to take advantage of those funds for your project. And you should apply for those funds, I think. And the funds that we have at the Commission, the ERDF funds, it's true that sometimes in the circular economy or sustainability, we're working on that. We're always encouraging this. We're working hard. We're working in environmental issues, eco-design, all of that. And sometimes the financing is approved for 2014 to 2020 in ERDF and other funds as well. But the important thing is that we're sending out pamphlets that financing will be for R&D, for SMEs, for low CO2 technologies and so forth. That's also part of circular economy. So circular economy is just to apply what we're doing. Everything. Hopefully, that would be the final objective. Would be to make everything circular. But I want to encourage the regions, the ones that are really managing the projects, know that at the Commission we will support these. And when the calls come through for circular economy or supporting innovation in SMEs, we want to make this more visible because, as Maria Jose said, we have to communicate, we have to make this more visible so that everyone gets involved and takes part in this change. Thanks very much. Now, one more thing. We have to go upstairs now because we have another very important part of the presentation and very dynamic because we have an elevator pitch with a poster, 2 minutes just to explain your project. So let's go upstairs and do that. Thanks very much.